Bike setups are incredibly personal and will vary from rider to rider. On the surface, it seems most brands will cater to a medium or average-sized rider. But what if you're not a whippet or a racing snake? What can we do to get your bike set up for you? Well, stick around, because today I'm going to show you how to set up your bike if you're a proper-sized rider. So we've come out to the woods today, we've got Liam with us, and we've pulled this lovely Canyon Neuron CF out of our toy box. Now, in setting this bike up, I'm going to walk you guys through how to set your bike up if you're a proper sized rider. And just to define proper, we're looking at 100 kilos or 220 pounds and up. So before we dive into frame and component choice, it's worth just considering the type of riding you're doing, because then that will dictate your bike choice, and some designs will work better for you than others. A quick thing to reference would be the frame's ASTM number. So ASTM stands for the American Society for Testing of Materials, in this case, standard 2043. So it works on a scale of 1 to 5. So condition 1, think road bikes, so paved roads and very, very light off-road duties where your wheels don't leave the ground. This then goes all the way up to condition 5 for extreme conditions. So this is very rough trails, seen on like downhill bikes and now some enduro bikes too. In the case of what we're discussing today, I'd look at something that's rated to condition 3 or higher, depending on how rowdy you're planning on getting. Now, condition 3 is for rough trails with jumps and drops of up to 60 centimetres. From here, you can look at the shape and design of the frame. Now, this will sometimes dictate how the bike feels to ride, and that can be incredibly personal. But firstly, look for sort of reinforced areas on the bike, particularly areas like where the top tube meets the seat tube in this junction just here. And whilst we're on frames, I've got to talk about frame materials. So carbon, whilst it might be the desirable option for its ride qualities, be it its lightweight nature, its playful, responsive sort of handling, it can have a lower weight limit sometimes, and at the point of failure can be an awful lot more catastrophic than other materials I'm about to mention. Aluminium alloy frames can be engineered to feel as playful as the carbon frames, but they're more resilient against things like rock strikes and sort of overall wear and tear. They can also be engineered to deal with higher loads as well, and at a fraction of the price. And then we've got steel, nice and strong and compliant, but a bit weighty. And then we've also got titanium, which is as strong, if not a little bit stronger than steel, at a fraction of the weight. But the only real downside to this is it can be quite expensive, which is why you normally see it saved for boutique builds. And now we're on to the components that build up your bike. So let's start with wheels. And as tempting as a carbon wheel set may be, for the most part, an aluminium wheel set will be more durable. Denting at the point a carbon wheel may fail completely. As well as being selective on material, look for a hub and rim combo with a high spoke count. Now, by having a higher spoke count, it distributes the load around the rim a lot better, which means you can run a lower spoke tension, which is a lot more forgiving and reduces fatigue over time. In this case, it may actually be beneficial to run a heavier casing tyre. Now, if you were to run this lighter casing tyre, chances are you'd need to put higher pressure in it to stop it folding or rolling, which would lose you comfort and grip. As well as this, choose a tyre that's nice and wide. So as I've rabbited on about again and again, running a wider tyre at a correct lower pressure will actually decrease rolling resistance whilst giving you more grip and comfort. Don't be afraid of running inserts as well. So what these do is they'll help protect the rim against square edge hits, and it'll just help tyre longevity if you are riding rough terrain. And now we're on to brakes, and it's simple physics with this one. So more mass is going to take more force to stop it. So in this instance, big brakes are a big help. So consider combining 4-piston calipers and larger rotors for that big power. As part of this as well, consider cooling. So naturally, a larger rotor with a larger surface area on it will actually dissipate heat better than a smaller rotor. As well as this, consider rotors that have got fins on them because they act as a bit of a heat sink. And whilst we're talking fins, I'm going to segue into brake pads. Now, brake pads with fins, great idea. They help dissipate heat even better. As well as this, consider your pad material. So if you're doing shorter runs, organic pads will work great. The likelihood is here, sintered pads won't heat up in time and feel nice. But if you are doing longer days out or longer runs and you need a little bit more longevity in your brakes, consider running semi-sintered or sintered brake pads. So most bikes now are coming fitted with either a 1051 or a 1052 cassette on the back, so you've got a massive range of gears there. But you can play about with the ratios even more by changing the size of your chainring. And again, this is complete personal preference. So do you prefer spinning up a climb? Do you prefer grinding up a climb? Now, the smaller the chainring, the lower the gear you're going to have. So we're seeing options for 28-tooth chainrings becoming easily available now, or even smaller if you know exactly where to look. Now we're on to suspension, and I won't go too much here into air versus coil because I did an explainer on that recently, so go and check that out. But in short, a heavier rider will need to run a higher pressure in your fork and your shock to get the correct sag. What this can mean sometimes is you are right on the pressure limit of that shock, which means you're losing out on the performance benefits of it by sacrificing suppleness for support. This is where it can be beneficial to run a coil shock, so you can fit a heavyweight spring to get the correct sag and retain the shock's supple nature. But if you are sticking with an air shock, there are things you can do to it to make it work for you. So I popped along to a local suspension tuner to find out a little bit more. So we're lucky enough to have just popped into Sprung suspension, and we've got Jake with us here. So today we're looking at how to set your bike up if you are a heavier rider. So we're defining that as 100 kilos, sort of 220 pounds and up. So is there anything you've found tuning suspension that would benefit a rider of that weight?
Yeah, there's a multitude of things really, and it's quite dependent on the rider and the bike as a start. There's no real starting point that we would go to as a, right, you just need X, Y, and Z. But the number one thing that we always say with everyone is set your sag. That is like your starting point for everything. Set your sag, go from there. If you're having major issues with bottoming out all the time, or even just using like way more travel than you are planning to use, then get in touch with a suspension centre, whether it's us or one of the others in the UK or wherever you're from. Get in touch with them and they'll be able to give you a personal approach, because at the end of the day, once we get up to kind of that weight of rider, especially on an e-bike, like your system weight and therefore kind of momentum becomes, you know, magnitudes bigger than what it would be on a lightweight XC bike with a small rider. So yeah, we do need to look at stuff relatively carefully and give you an approach that will work for you.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of tuning the shocks themselves, are there any things you tend to find yourself doing with that?
Generally, stuff like firmer shim stacks, slower or differently tuned rebound. Obviously, slower doesn't necessarily mean actually slower on the bike, but more shims to allow that force to be, you know, taken away better. If you think of it as a, you know, it takes more force to hold a car spring down than a biro spring. So obviously that rebound tune has to be working for the spring rate that you're running.
Okay, cool.
And that's really, shim stacks, volume spacers, which, generally it's an easy way to get some gains. But really, if you're 100 kilos or pushing even more than that, then speak to somewhere, and I'm sure that there are some massive gains that can be made.
Nice, awesome.
Checking 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
So we've got Liam with us today. Now he's our audio wizard and makes our videos sound really good. But before we get on to setting up this Neuron for him, I want to know, mate, what do you do to your own bikes to make them work for you?
Mainly just sag, really. And then making sure I've got some good brakes. That's pretty much it. Anything other than that, I just kind of leave it as standard and just see what happens when I go down. So
is there like a must-have, I guess, brake size?
Anything over 200mm rotors. I think anything less than that, and I go through them so quick, and I don't really have the power there. I ride a lot of kind of steep stuff, so I need some good braking power.
So that's 200mm front and rear on the bike?
200mm front and rear. I did have 180mm on my first bike, and just went through it so quick. So 200mm front and rear.
And are there any sort of components you have to, you find yourself keeping an eye on?
Not particularly. I've always tried to get as big a shock and as big a suspension as I can. But other than that, not really, no. I just go with what I've got, really.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Well, we're going to put a bit of time into getting this bike set up. perfectly for you, and we're going to send you down a hill.
Cool,
So
sounds good.
let's get to it. Cool, so we're going to get into setting up this Canyon Neuron now for Liam. And to be fair, out the box, it did actually have quite a few features on it that would sort of lean it towards a heavier rider quite well. So the one thing we have done is fit a larger front rotor to it. So it came with a 180 and we've immediately jumped it up to a 200mm. Now, owing to clearance on the rear of the bike, it is limited to 180mm. But being a trail bike and sort of where you're going to be riding that type of bike, I think that's enough, if I'm honest. So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, you've got a nice 30-tooth chainring on it, appropriate length cranks. So what I have heard from other heavier riders is that shorter cranks can be key, just in case you are running a little bit more sag than maybe you want, just to avoid pedal strikes. But other than that, I think we can set your sag and then see how you go from there.
Cool.
So we've got a max pressure of 360 PSI on this Super Deluxe shock, and it's currently at 220. So we'll try it on 250. That's looking better. Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. So before you send you down the trail, just going to adjust your lever position a little bit, because I think the person who rode this last must have had massive hands, because they are quite far in at the minute. So we're going to bring them out a tad. So loose them off, both sides. There we go.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah, feels better.
So before we came here today, I thought knowing you ride flat pedals, I slapped on a set of the Stamp 7s from Crank Brothers, but in a size large, because you're a size 12 shoe?
12, yeah.
Yep, so size 48 for our European friends. And just having that support on your feet is kind of crucial.
Yeah, I run the same on my other bike.
Sweet.
And I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go for anything
There we
different.
go. Yeah. And with big feet comes big hands. So we've fitted the thicker GD1 option from Ergon. They're a nice ergonomic grip, and I think that'll do you right today. To summarise what we've done, we've set your sag up on here now. We did have to put a little bit more pressure. It wasn't too much, to be fair to you. But yeah, we've also adjusted your touch points now, gone through them on your pedal choice. In terms of tyres, on this, we've got a really good set of trail tyres on there in 2.6, so you've got loads of air volume in there to play about with and sort of help you hook up on this increasingly wet surface.
Yeah.
You have got a tyre insert in the rear as well. So if you do find yourself riding some janky stuff, don't be too afraid of it.
Cool.
There you go. So all that's left is to send you down a trail.
Sweet.
Let's get to it. So luckily we found a break in the weather now, and we're just going to kind of like wrap up and sort of find out what you thought of the canyon we set up for you. So first time on the bike, but with a more considered setup.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
It was surprisingly, it didn't feel like a new bike, to be fair.
Okay.
Like, I think even just getting the first kind of run into the tables that I did at the start, as soon as I did one run, it felt pretty natural.
Nice.
So I think I definitely need to kind of look at setting my own bike up a bit more.
Yeah.
A bit more in tune, as opposed to just kind of getting the sag near enough ready and then kind of just winging it from there.
Cool. Was there anything like going forwards, if you spent more time with that bike, we could have done or we could do?
Maybe play around a little bit with tyre pressure.
Yeah.
And then maybe some more fine tuning on the suspension. But other than that, it was like, it felt super dialed straight away. So yeah, it was really cool.
That's nice, because I think you were saying when you were doing the jumps, it felt like you didn't quite have that suppleness because of the air pressure in it. So maybe a little bit more of a shock tune and a bit more time there would be beneficial.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Cool. Well, let us know down in the comments if you are a proper size rider and if you have got any tips to pass on. And like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.